I'm Mike Costello, and I'm here with Dr. Iris Freelander, and today we'd like to talk to you about self-renewal. You know, in metaphysical New Thought philosophy, we always say that we live in our minds and not in the world, and so as we change our way of thinking, we can change the quality of our lives. We never tire of saying that because we never tire of sharing with you ideas and concepts that can transform and make your life and my life better, more fulfilling, and more empowering. It's wonderful, isn't it, that we are able to self-renew, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because we need to treat ourselves as kindly as we do others, and very often we fail to do that. But more than that, self-renewal can just be one big deep breath, can't it?
Mm-hmm. And just the simplest act is that,
Yeah.
because as we renew ourselves in little ways or in big ways, there is a dramatic impact on all of the aspects of our lives. And so often we talk on this program and at the fellowship and in our counseling in terms of the mind-body-spirit connection. And just the simplest renewal of one aspect of our life, just as you said, by taking a deep breath,
Yeah.
can have impact on mind, body, and spirit, can it?
It really can. At one time, I was doing exercises, lifting weights. I was holding weights and doing certain exercises, and I got some things in my hand, like gristle in my hands. And someone I know had to have surgery because he played the organ, and those hard things grew all through his palms and pulled his hands in. So I asked my doctor about that, and I said, I don't want that to happen. So he gave me exercises to do so that I just flexed my hands at various times, and they went away. And it was such a wonderful thing. And I think that's a good example of we can consciously change anything in our lives and create self-renewal just by our own personal discipline. And when we decide to do something, just like deep breathing, for example, it would behoove all of us to practice deep breathing all day long. We can do it when we're at a stoplight. We can do it when we're standing at the kitchen sink. We can do it at various times. And if we do, it makes a big difference in our energy level at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and so many of us don't give thought to breathing. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we know from a health standpoint is that we are really much healthier if we can get the oxygen level into our bodies. But aside from that, deep breathing or taking an occasional deep breath and consciously becoming aware of our breathing has a positive impact upon our stress reduction.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a single person on planet Earth, and certainly none in the United States, who doesn't want to improve their stress level.
Exactly.
And thereby renew themselves. And of course, as we can reduce the negative or the damaging kind of stress, and there are two kinds of stresses, we know. There are good kinds of stress and there's a bad and negative stress. But most of us are troubled with the negative kind, which comes from our feeling of questioning our self-worth, being fearful, being negative, that aspect of stress, being overtired, overburdened, and having the problems that all of us have from time to time. But that deep breathing and being aware of our breathing is really, from a physical, spiritual, and mental standpoint, very, very empowering.
Yes, because we are mind, body, and spirit, and what affects one aspect of our being affects all of it. And so we can be far more free in every way in our lives if we're relaxed, and we're more relaxed if we breathe deeply. And so the first thing that meditation, we talk about meditation a lot, and it's because it's such a wonderful aspect of being, but everyone needs to go into deep breathing before meditating, and they get a much deeper and better meditation. It's interesting how some people don't really know that, and then when they do it the first time, they feel so free. They free their energies up so that they're just almost like a different person. And we all need to do that, and we owe it to ourselves. And when we think of self-renewal, that's the basic aspect. But self-renewal, too, is doing something new and different from time to time, a new endeavor. And self-renewal is in not being overburdened when we know that someone is being critical of us or someone has said something negative about us, but just like the kids say, shine it on. Because if we take that into our consciousness, then we're going to be stressed. But if we just say, well, they have a right to say whatever they think, God bless them, then it doesn't impact on us negatively. And it's just like when we're doing office work or cooking, any kind of housework, and we fall short of the mark, then that's okay. Everyone's going to fall short of the mark. And perhaps tomorrow we'll think, well, that was okay. So we just need to not be hard on ourselves and to be able to flow with what life gives us and what we do with life, and know that if we decide to do that, whatever it is, then that's probably best in the long run. And very often it doesn't matter.
Mhm. Absolutely. Our energy is a renewable resource, isn't it?
Yes.
And we do need resources that are renewable. And our energy level is totally depleted, as you said so well, by the negative aspects of living. And so many of us are constantly depleting our energy level. And we know this, and I'm sure our viewers can identify with the fact that if they feel tired all the time or worn out all the time, well, it's time for a little renewal, isn't it?
Exactly.
And it's time to really look at how it is we're spending our energy, and whether or not we're creating any energy in a positive and affirmative way. Because of course we can run out of gas, and that really is very devastating.
Yes, it is. But then it means we need more rest. And so we need to arrange our schedules so that we get more rest. And I know that's easier said than done. And when we're stressed out, we think, well, we can't possibly have more time. But that's exactly when we need to do it and need to create a change in our lives, so that we just take a day to be alone or a day to be with a special person, but a change of pace so that we're not pushing ourselves in a way that's stressful for us, so that we get the renewal. And we can often do things for our bodies, for our minds, for our spirits, that if we just think about it, we can see what really pleases us and makes us feel good, and then do that over a period of time, over and over, so that we are. And what makes us feel really good one week or month, it might be something totally different the next. So we have to be introspective and know what it is we need. But most people need a little time for themselves, and very often they don't take that time.
This issue of introspection is something that we really promote and encourage people to do. And so often people have never done that, have never gone within and really taken an objective look at themselves, kind of walk through your mind or your consciousness. One of the things every year when I speak at the fellowship, I try at least once a year, usually in the springtime, to talk about spring cleaning of our thoughts and our brains. We need to clean those things out. And it really is important that we spend some time within and look at how it is we are viewing life, how it is we're viewing those around us, and how it is we're viewing ourselves. And before we get off the topic of sleep, and you touched upon that, which was wonderful, we do need sleep if we're tired, and we need to have regular sleep patterns and time to refresh the body, the mind, and the spirit. But if people are sleeping too much, and if they're lethargic and requiring a huge amount of sleep, it could very well be that that's a sign of need for this introspection and for a change of direction and a recharging of the batteries, because so often depression really manifests in that way. And we're talking about the minor depressions that we all go through from time to time that we deal with in life. If someone is dealing with deep depression that lasts for extended periods of time, we always encourage people to get professional help for that. But if you're periodically depressed, or if you're tired all the time, and yet you're resting, that is sleeping at night, and maybe you're sleeping too long at night and needing to nap during the day, that's a real sign that you need some self-renewal. And some of the techniques that we're sharing today need to be applied.
Yes, and sometimes we need to change our diet, but other times we just need to eat more slowly, whatever we do eat, and just give some thought to how often we eat and so forth. We need to review whatever it is we're doing when we're overly fatigued. And in our counseling, I'm sure it's true in yours, that more people complain about tiredness and fatigue than any other thing. Because and I think that's because, and you probably will agree, that it's because they drive themselves too strongly and they care too deeply about things that are inconsequential.
Right. And I think we need to go back to the issue of looking at certain things in life we have control over and certain things we don't. And those things over which we have little or no control, we simply have to deal with them.
Exactly.
And we need to build within ourselves the mechanism to deal with them. And I absolutely agree with you that probably one of the most difficult clinical presentations of people that come is this issue of being tired. And so often when people are tired, they're unhappy. and that unhappiness is manifest in this weariness.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has to do with attitude, doesn't it?
Yes,
It
it
all
does.
has to do with
Yeah.
what happens up here, what happens between our ears, in our brain, and the way that we think and in our thought process. And the other thing that's important to share is that we're not talking about some Pollyanna kind of a thing that you just make yourself happy in spite of what's going on. Instead, you deal with the reality of whatever it is that's going on in your life at any given time and be able to cope and deal with it in a positive and affirmative way. Wherever we are, that's where we are. And one of the things that you've heard me say so often, and I keep repeating, and I think it needs to be repeated, is if we're depressed, we're depressed. If we're tired, we're tired. If we're happy, we're happy. Whatever it is we're feeling is okay. And the beginning point of change, the beginning point of self-renewal, the beginning point of moving in a positive and affirmative way is to accept where we are. Now, the key is not to accept it and stay there. And so often people will accept it and say, this is where I am and this is where I like to be. And of course, we don't want anyone to be in an uncomfortable or negative place and stay there. But it is important to acknowledge where we are at any given time in our lives. It's all right to be where we are, and then to decide how it is we can renew or create a different manifestation of life by changing a variety of things in our routine.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we just need to wait for a time for those changes to manifest, but we can work toward them. And if we have the frame of mind that they're going to happen, they'll happen without fail. And then we'll see sometimes that what we thought we wanted wasn't what we really wanted, but that's okay, because we flowed with whatever life has given us, and then we found what we really truly do want. And so I think depression is caused by frustration, where people are so frustrated that they think they can't get out of a situation, but we can get out of any situation, or we can change the way we think about that situation. And we've all seen people in personal relationship, family relationships, where things aren't to their liking. But if they change their attitude, if the individual changes their attitude, then their whole life changes.
Mm-hmm. And attitude can change everything about us. It can change our mind, it can change our body, it can change our spirit. And one of the things that we need to spend some time talking about is all of these ideas and concepts that we are sharing in this program and all of our programs do have an impact on our bodies, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And our bodies are so impacted by our mind. And today there's so much interest in the mind-body connection. And of course, in our movement and in our fellowship and in our work, we put together the mind-body-spirit connection. But our physical bodies are so tormented or benefited by our attitude and our way of thinking.
That's always true. And we have to look to the good. But more than that, I'm thinking of a lady who attended one of the meditation meetings at our church, and she and her husband were estranged. And so during that meditation meeting, she had the idea that all she needs to do is deal with her husband with unconditional love. And she doesn't have to say or do anything else, just show unconditional love. And she did, and their marriage has been wonderfully strong. And that was about a year ago, and their marriage is still wonderfully strong. And they had a renewal, like a self-renewal of their married life together. And that's a wonderful example that we often just have to change our thinking in one aspect, and then the whole life changes.
Right. And so often we believe that it's others that need to change or the circumstances need to change. And in fact, we are always the one that needs to change. We'd like to pause at this point in the program and offer you the opportunity to receive some literature so that you can continue your study of the ideas and concepts we're sharing.
We would like to give you the opportunity to explore and discover in your own home the new thought teachings that this program is sharing with you by sending you a free copy of one of these booklets. Simply address your request to Confident Living at P.O. Box 7726, Long Beach, California, 90807. Whatever your dream, whatever your vision, you can reach it through confident living.
Before the break, we were talking about the marriage renewal and the renewal that this woman had in her commitment to her husband and to her marriage vows. In relationships, we always have to be renewing, don't we?
Yeah.
And so often, I think, in marriages and relationships with our children or with significant others in our lives, with our parents and with all of those around us in our workplace, we often think that if we have a relationship, and we like each other, or we love each other, whatever we feel is just going to go on forever. And that it doesn't require maintenance and it doesn't require effort. But in fact, we do need to be renewing ourselves and our relationships always, don't we?
Yes, but if we renew ourselves, our relationship usually takes care of itself. And I was thinking, you were enumerating all the various ways that we need to have the renewal. And I was thinking in school, I've seen children who said, and perhaps I did, I don't remember it, said, the teacher doesn't like me. And so that child has a real problem there, because if they think that, they're going to put all the blame on that, and they're never going to take self-responsibility. So one way of blaming others for things is to not assume self-responsibility. And I don't think when people do that they consciously are doing it. But isn't that true, that we're just avoiding self-responsibility when we blame others?
Absolutely. And for so many of us, it becomes a habit. And it becomes a way in which we get our way.
Yeah.
And we have to put less effort into life, and we don't have to look at ourselves. And of course, what we all need to do is to look at ourselves. And of course,
Exactly.
we need to look at ourselves and be happy and satisfied and fulfilled at what we see. And sadly, we know from a psychological and from a sociological standpoint, we're told that this issue of self-esteem and our issues of self-worth are among the highest problems, or the gravest problems that we have, especially here in the United States and in the Western world. And that really speaks to the heart of who and what we are, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But sometimes they can put self-esteem in the wrong category, because we need to teach children discipline. We'd have to make them be self-responsible. And we can't just talk about self-esteem in essence. We have to think of all the factors that create that self-esteem and help the younger people see their lives in a different light, so that they become self-responsibility. Because to me, the bottom line is self-responsibility in any aspect of that, whether we're of whatever age we are, of whatever profession or non-profession we're involved in. It's all our own responsibility to take care of our own self, our mind, body, and spirit, and then the energy we send out to others to be that same way, and not expect too much of other people, but just to know that if we take, as you said earlier, if we take care of the aspect of being in our own lives, then everything else falls into place for us.
And this issue of self-responsibility goes to the very heart of what New Thought's all about, doesn't it?
Yes.
From a spiritual standpoint, because in our faith tradition, and again, we're not inviting people to change their faith, we're just sharing our ideas and our concepts, but we believe that spirituality is an issue of self-responsibility. It's not an issue of what God wants or does for us. It's not an issue of whether it is the will of God or not the will of God. And we believe firmly that God's will, divine will, never changes. And the feeling that God has for all of us is the same. It doesn't change. It's not based upon our behavior or whether we're good or whether we're bad. It is based upon on unconditional acceptance and love of us. Then it's our responsibility to deal with circumstances and situations and accept the consequences of our acts and our thoughts and our deeds. And so everything about metaphysical New Thought philosophy and spirituality is about individual responsibility and individual choices. And that doesn't take anything away from God. God is a constant. God is constant good. And God never changes his or her opinion of us. But we change our opinion about ourselves, and we make decisions, and we behave in certain ways, and we do things that we ought not to do, and those things have consequences. And so we are taking or we are shirking the personal responsibility that we have, and it's always up to us, isn't it?
Yes, and as you said so well, God is love. Essentially, God is unconditional love. And if we can view ourselves in that same light, and then view others in the same light, we're truly living a godlike existence, because then we don't put problems into other people's lives, and we don't put blocks in our own way, but we just go through life really accepting the good and expecting the good and doing what we can with whatever happens in our lives. And when we can do that, we're truly living the life we were meant to live. And then we're not blaming other people for anything, and we're not being overly critical of other people. We are enjoying whatever is our lot in life and enjoying others around us. So when we do that, we know that we're living in God's image because of being unconditional love.
Mhm. And in that same process, as we do that, it doesn't matter what happens in our lives because we're able to deal with whatever circumstance or situation comes. And that renewal that we're talking about becomes self-perpetuating. And what we talked about in the earlier part of the program of this self-renewing resource is that divine presence within us. And that guides us and directs us and empowers us in ways that we could never imagine.
Exactly, and we know that change is inevitable, so then we keep our equilibrium and we accept change as being inevitable and wonderful. And we can't have more good happen unless we have some change. And so we shouldn't have when we put preconceived ideas onto what's going to happen, then we're looking for trouble there because we just need to do our best and then expect the best, and then it happens, and accept whatever happens as the best.
Yeah. And let others accept their good or their lot as their lot. And that's very difficult when we're in relationships and when we're in family circles. But the fact is that each one of us is going to experience that which we need in this pilgrimage that we call life. And in metaphysics, we say that life is really the school of the soul. And so we've come here to learn lessons. And other people's lessons are really none of our business. Now, we certainly don't influence people in a negative way or hurt them, but we do release people around us. We release them to their great good, to the good that is theirs and that's going to be manifest in their life. But we really can't live their lives for them. And isn't it important that we stay out of people's lives and we stay within our own being and within our own personhood and within our own consciousness and emanate that which we can in the most positive and affirmative way.
Yes, and that we are accepting that whatever anyone is doing is for the best, and not being judgmental. But being judgmental creates more problems, and more distress and more estrangement in life. So we can just when we're positive, we're not exercising those negativities. So if we just stay positive in our lives, and then we're far ahead. And the way we can stay more positive is to accept, as we said earlier, unconditionally, that everyone has a right to make their own choices. And we have a right, the same right. And if we exercise that right, that's wonderful.
And we make right choices.
Yes.
And we always have to be conscious of the choices that we're making and make every effort to make the right choice for ourselves, and that impacts those around us.
So in summing, what do we do for self-renewal? It's being kind to ourselves, first of all, and keeping our own lives clear and bright, because then we reflect on the lives of others far better than if we push ourselves to do things for other people too much, because then when we run our limit, then we're more apt to be negative and be sharp and be snappy. And so we just need to remember that we have to keep our own bodies, minds, and spirits uplifted and strong, and then do what comes naturally for us and what comes our way.
I think in the last few minutes that we have in the program, we should touch again on the issue of meditation and breathing. We do that so often in this program, but I think we can never do it too much, because we need to introduce people more and more to the concept and the idea of meditation, of prayer, of reflection, of introspection. And those techniques are really the keys to the renewal of our being in mind, body, and spirit.
Yes. Well, first of all, we could say if anyone would like to learn to meditate or learn a new technique of meditation, they can call our telephone number listed here, and we can give them help and advice. Or they might join us for a meditation on Sunday morning, or when we have the planned meditation times. And most of all, it's just breathing deeply and knowing that we're centering ourselves. And by centering ourselves, it means we're connected with Creator God. And when we and that's so sometimes it's easy to say, and some people say, well, that's easy for you to say, but it's hard for me to do. Well, it really isn't difficult. We might make it difficult, but it's so simple in its own simplicity.
It's simple, but it really requires discipline to begin, doesn't
Yes.
it? And discipline to continue. And it's interesting that some of us can discipline ourselves to exercise our bodies, but to exercise our mind and our spirits is another matter. But then a lot of people aren't able to exercise the body either. So I think a beginning point is to employ some significant discipline in these spiritual and mental techniques. And meditation really does require in the beginning some discipline, doesn't it? And the other thing I think we ought to warn people about, if there's a warning, is that it takes some time. And so don't just sit down for the first time and be disgruntled about the fact that one doesn't get from it that which is expected. It is a process, and it's faster for some and it's slower for others.
Yes, and sometimes we can have meditated for many years, I know for sure, and then we don't have a good meditation necessarily every time. But I'm laughing because on Sunday morning when you lead the meditation, well, it's like sometimes we go out of our bodies and we have trouble getting back because it's such a wonderful space to be in that it's like we forget where we are. And I know from my own duties at the church service sometimes I'm remiss because I sit there and I'm like not asleep by any means, but out of my body. And it's a wonderful thing to know that, and it must be wonderful for you to know that you're really leading that group of people in unison toward peace of mind and harmony. And that's what group meditation does. So I would suggest to anyone that they avail themselves of some group meditation, because we always tell people that they get their greatest meditation, their most significant meditation, when they meditate alone. But they get to that point by doing the group meditations. And I know that that's true because, as you know, we've been leading meditation groups for many years, and I've seen it happen over and over. So we get farther along if we do have some group meditation. But we need to practice the individual time alone regularly.
And the breathing's important.
Yes. Well, totally. We start by the deep breathing. We start it that way. And then it just becomes a normal thing. And I always count, when I lead the groups, I always count 1, 2, that they're breathing in 8 to the count of 8 and out to the count of 8 when people are just learning. But they can breathe at any rhythm, but it needs to be rhythmic. And when they do breathe rhythmically, then deliberately in the beginning, then it becomes a natural all through the rest of the meditation.
And meditation itself, like breathing, can become natural and can become a part of the self-renewal of your mind, body, and spirit. And we hope that the ideas and concepts that Dr. Freelander and I have been sharing with you are helpful and useful. We look forward to seeing you next time.